90s comics are notorious for terrible redesigns. All your favourite heroes got shiny new costumes, with spikes and pouches, and mullets for some reason. It was a decade of experimentation, reinvention, and, let's face it, excess. But in case you're new to the channel, I love 90s comics. That's my era. And for every crop top wearing Thor, armoured Captain America, or boob window Sue Storm, there were times when a superhero's new suit not only didn't suck, but actually improved on what came before. Hey heroes, I'm Josh from Panels to Pixels, and these are 10 90s comics costumes that are good, actually. Number 10, Tim Drake as Robin. The original Robin costume that remained pretty much unchanged since the Golden Age is a classic, it's iconic. But the 90s version, Tim Drake's Robin costume, is a textbook example of how to modernise a suit but keep its core DNA. First appearing in Batman issue 457, cover dated December 1990, this one just sneaks in there for qualifying as a 90s costume. Tim Drake is introduced to the series 21 issues earlier, and he's just kind of hanging out in Bruce Wayne's house, just chilling, and kind of, it's being seeded that he'll become the next Robin, but Bruce is like, no, I'm not putting another child on the line. How many times have we heard that one, Bruce? But eventually he debuts with his own special suit, and this is has become the de facto modern Robin suit, I would say. It was designed by legendary Batman artist Neil Adams, while one of my favourite Batman artists of all time, Norm Breyfogle, he contributed the revamped R logo on the chest and the collapsible staff. This was also the suit that was kind of adapted for Batman the Animated Series for Robin, and I think it's become the prevailing look for the character. For a lot of people, it's kind of supplanted the original. What I really like about this one is that Bruce has designed this costume for Tim Drake and has swapped out the little green trunks for long trousers. So, trying to quash those rumours, eh, Bruce? Number 9, Storm. So it's 1991, right? And the X-Men are getting this big relaunch, a new number 1, and we all know that sold a gazillion copies. But Jim Lee, legendary X-Men artist, he's doing this big relaunch, kind of starting a new era for the X-Men in the 90s, and he designs all these new suits for them all. Most of the X-Men, they got new uniforms, and Storm was one of them. Spoiler alert, there might be some more Jim Lee X-Men designs on this list coming up. Now, Storm as a character has had a lot of redesigns over the years, and her batting average is pretty good, I would say. From her classic look in Giant Size X-Men to the Mohawk kind of punk biker jacket look, and then this Jim Lee designed costume, which for a lot of people is the de facto look for Storm, and it certainly is for me. And in a way, this was the original, is it blue or black or is it white and gold dress? Some people see Storm's costume as black shiny leather, some see it as silver, and some see it as white. I think white has been kind of reaffirmed to people because of the 90s cartoon. I think most people see it now as white, but I definitely see it as black leather in the comics, especially when Will's Potatio comes on the book later. That's definitely black leather in my opinion. For me, this is the definitive look for one of my favourite characters of all time, and it definitely would have ranked higher if it wasn't so similar to the uniform that Storm wore in the 80s during the Outback era. Ultimately it's not a great departure from that look, but it's a great redesign nonetheless. Number 8, Hal Jordan as Parallax. The whole Parallax saga is long and kind of complicated, but the basic gist is that in 1994, DC had the quite novel idea of replacing Hal Jordan, who had been the primary Green Lantern since the 1950s, with Kyle Rayner, and then turning Hal Jordan into a supervillain called Parallax. With that came a new badass costume that kind of reimagines the classic Silver Age Green Lantern uniform as a kind of glam metal techno armor. I really like this look. First appearing in Green Lantern issue 50, cover dated March 1994, I really have a lot of love for this suit designed by Darryl Banks. And yeah, it can be seen as a relic of the Jim Lee and Rob Liefeldification of comic book costume design, but I think this one still holds up. Number 7, Catwoman. Designed by Jim Balent for Catwoman's 1993 ongoing series, this costume is definitely pulling inspiration from 1992's Batman Returns and Batman the Animated Series. Two adaptations that kind of put Catwoman on the map, to be honest. But Balent enriches this skin-tight leather look by mixing in the purple colour of Catwoman's Golden Age outfit. First appearing in 1993's Catwoman issue 1, I feel like this suit fuses all the best versions of Catwoman's previous costumes, with a really cool mask, which is cat-like but not too goofy. It's not cartoony, it's sinister. The eye holes are really cool, and the exposed hair at the back is very 90s, but it's very cool. Tim Sale would later give her back the whiskers and tail in The Long Halloween, but the basic purple catsuit endured throughout the 90s, and it's still the definitive look for Catwoman to a lot of people, even now. Number 6, Nightwing. To be honest, I don't really mind Nightwing's original disco suit of the 1980s, or the early 90s upgraded version, but both kind of pale in comparison to what we now think of as Nightwing's modern suit, although it first appeared in the 90s, in Nightwing issue 2, cover dated October 1995. This costume was designed by Brian Stelfreeze, and the blue V on an all-black suit shows a level of restraint virtually unheard of in the 90s. It's really a masterclass in minimalism, proving that you don't need a bunch of lines and tech details to design an iconic costume. Number 5, the Sensational Spider-Man. I kind of went back and forth on whether to include Ben Reilly's homemade Scarlet Spider suit with the hoodie, or his later Sensational Spider-Man look. Because I love them both, honestly, in different ways, and they're both part of the character's, progression from kind of outcast clone to assuming the full mantle of Spider-Man. Ultimately, for this list, I went with the suit that Ben Reilly wears when he does become the Sensational Spider-Man, because it's just such a great modernization of the classic Spidey costume. Without being too overly designed or overly edgy, it's definitely a 90s costume, but it's pretty restrained in that respect. A clone of Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, Ben Reilly was introduced in the infamous Clone Saga of the 1990s. But his official Spidey suit first appears in Sensational Spider-Man issue 0, cover dated January 1996. This is a classic design by Mark Bagley, with the big black spider emblem which kind of spreads across the chest, and it just looks badass. It's still sleek, but it has the chunky web shooters on the wrists, and the general paneling of the suit, it gives a more armoured and athletic look, I think. This was just a bit of a refresh of the classic Spidey look. It was a bit more contemporary, and for a whole generation of kids who grew up during that brief time when Ben Reilly was the Spider-Man, I think this suit has become super iconic. Number 4, Iron Man's modular armor. Oh, we're getting to the good stuff now. First appearing in Iron Man issue 300, cover dated January 1994, this was just the latest suit in Tony Stark's ever-expanding armory. The modular armor was designed by Len Kaminsky and Kevin Hopgood, and was so called for its modular weapons and defense system. This suit gives Tony Stark access to just about every repulsor ray, laser beam, railgun, shoulder missiles, EMP, whatever crazy thing you can think of. And then, of course, there was the Hulkbuster add-on. But the real reason that this suit is so fondly remembered, I think, is that it was featured in both the 90s Iron Man cartoon and the Marvel vs. Capcom series of games. This look for Iron Man has definitely had a resurgence in popularity recently, and there was even a Marvel Legends figure, I think there's been a couple now, based on this armor. And also, I think you can draw quite a straight line from this design to what Adi Granov was doing in the 2000s with the Extremis armor, and then that obviously led on to the first Iron Man movie in 2008. This really feels like the first major modernization of Iron Man, in my opinion. Number 3, Azrael as Batman. First appearing in Batman issue 500, cover dated October 1993, this suit was part of the Nightfall storyline. Jean-Paul Valley, aka Azrael, assumes the role of Batman while Bruce Wayne recovers from being snapped like a twig by Bane. And the introduction of this suit was a big deal. There's a whole sequence in the comic of Jean-Paul designing the suit and explaining every element of it and what that means in relation to the classic Batman suit. With its shiny gold and its spikes and its big silver claws and red eyes and big sweeping blue cape, this is pure 90s edginess, but it really works for me. I think this really stands up. At the end of the day, Azrael is a more merciless, more brutal character than Bruce Wayne. He's ultimately turns out to be like an unhinged Batman, and that's why Bruce has to come and defeat him and retake the mantle. I think this suit is supposed to be a little off-putting in that way. It's supposed to be a little too menacing, and that's what great storytelling is all about. Azrael comes in for a little bit. Obviously, he was never going to replace Bruce Wayne full-time, but that's tension, and so the suit represents that tension, and then you have the resolution when Bruce returns in the classic Batman duds. In that way, it doesn't feel like a regression when Bruce comes back in the classic blue and grey. It feels like resolution. Number 2, Superman's recovery suit. Superman's recovery suit, aka the black suit, is what Superman wears after being killed by Doomsday in the classic Death of Superman. The Man of Steel reappears in Action Comics issue 689 in these new black duds with just beautiful silver detailing. I love anything chrome, anything shiny. I love this suit. Based on a sketch by John Bogdanov, I think that's how you say his name, the idea here is that the black suit, because it's black, absorbs more solar energy, allowing Superman to regenerate faster. That's the idea in the story, anyway. Much like Spider-Man's black costume, I think it was just chosen because it takes a classic, family-friendly character and gives them a bit of edge. It makes them look darker and ultimately cooler. That's certainly why Zack Snyder chose to use it in the Justice League. You know, that doesn't really play a narrative role in that film. In fact, some would argue it goes against the narrative of that film, but it looks cool, so we're gonna put it in. Supes didn't wear this suit for long in the comics. It was destroyed just a few months later in Superman issue 82, although variations on the solar suit have reappeared in the comics loads of times over the years, frankly, because it's a great look. Number 1, Cyclops. Let's try something. I want you to close your eyes and I want you to imagine the X-Men character Cyclops. And there is a pretty good chance, especially if you're of a certain age, that you're picturing him in his Jim Lee design duds from the 1990s. Like Storm, Scott Summers, you can open your eyes now by the way, but Scott Summers got new threads in X-Men issue 1 for that big relaunch. Dispensing with the traditional body condom that the character had been sporting since the 1960s, Cyc takes fashion cues from Gambit and rocks a kind of half face sock with exposed hair, because 90s. Plus a bandolier body harness thing full of pouches, because 90s. And some random thigh straps thrown in for good measure. You know why? Because 90s. Not much more to say about this one, really. It's become the definitive look for the character, and it's easily one of the most iconic costume designs of the 1990s. Thanks for watching this video, heroes. This was kind of an experiment for me. I want to start producing more kind of unscripted content, and you know, it's just a bit of fun, isn't it? So I hope you like this one. Let me know down in the comments if you enjoy the video, and also let me know what are some of your favorite comic costume redesigns of the 1990s. As always, if you want to see more videos like this, then subscribe to Panels to Pixels. Don't forget to give that bell icon a little ring-a-ding-ding so you never miss out on future uploads, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.